Hello and welcome to PondHub with Tim. This week I'm looking at how to look after your pond during a drought. It's the first day of August and the long dry spell continues. The old vicarage, like many parts of the country, is now under a hosepipe ban and drought conditions are spreading with no prospect of significant rain anytime soon. So now seemed like a good moment to consider how I take care of my pond under those quite challenging circumstances. It's important to understand what happens in a pond as water levels start to drop. Well, firstly, the water temperature is rising, which is what's causing evaporation. When this happens, the process of breaking down organic matter speeds up, and this can lead to spikes in water toxicity. Also, during hot weather, as the water temperature rises, the water holds less oxygen. And finally, during hot weather, the water temperature can lead to an increase in algae as it blooms and grows rapidly. This can then add to the additional problems. So looking after your pond during a drought is very important. Now, an important question is, am I allowed to top up my pond? Well, if you're using stored rainwater, which is always the preference anyway, then obviously the answer is yes. The question really is, can I use a hose or tap water to top up my pond? Well, as far as I can tell, if your pond has animals living in it, if it has fish or other animals, then you can top up a pond for animal welfare reasons. Now, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should. You should always, during these kinds of conditions, use water sparingly and to a minimum. But with the PondHub ponds, where we have the tadpoles for the great crested newts, which are still very much gill breathing, these would, I believe, count as animals that need protecting. So yes, if necessary, I can use a hose to top up my pond. However, using a hose is not really a simple, straightforward, or in fact desirable thing to do. There are a number of reasons why. Firstly, tap water contains chlorine, and so this can be harmful to the beneficial bacteria and the animals that live in the pond. So if I'm going to be using tap water, I'm going to need a dechlorinator. Secondly, tap water contains nutrients which will feed algae. So if I'm adding tap water to my pond, I also need to consider algae. And the things that I need to do are remove algae before adding tap water and then follow up with an algae treatment. Now, one of the challenges of using a dechlorinator, if I decide to top up my pond, is knowing how much dechlorinator I need to add. In order to know that, I need to know roughly how much tap water I'm putting into my pond. Now, I use a kind of rough rule of thumb measure by measuring the flow rate of the hose that I'm going to use. So I've set up my stopwatch here, and I've got the hose that I might use here. So I've also got a 2-litre bottle. So I start my timer, or I do if my watch works, and that's running. And then I measure how long it takes for 2 litres of water to come out of the hose. There, and that's full. And that took 42 seconds. So I know that every 42 seconds, 2 litres of water leaves my hose, so I can use that to calculate a pour time, aiming and give me the number of litres that I am putting into my pond. So if it's 42 seconds for 2 litres, that means it's 21 seconds a litre. So if I want to add 200 litres, 21 times 200. And that gives me the number of seconds I would need to run the hose. If I divide that by 60, then that would give me the number of minutes. So it's 1 hour and 10 minutes. Now with the NV dechlorinator, 20 milliliters treats 500 liters of pond water. So in 1 hour and 10 minutes, I'd have 200 liters, which is 200 divided by 500 is 0.4 times that by 20 milliliters gives me 8 milliliters of dechlorinator for my 200 liters of water. And there we are. I worked out how much I need to add. Ultimately, it would be better to find ways to avoid using tap water in the pond. And there are certain things that I can do to protect my water quality even without topping up. Firstly, I should be staying on top of organic matter in the pond. Now, hot, dry weather will produce heat stress on the trees around the pond, so they are now dropping leaves into the pond. By removing this, I am protecting my water quality. The other thing I can do is, even when not adding tap water, I can try and stay on top of the algae levels in the pond, which will also protect oxygen levels and protect water quality. So keeping on top of algae is very important in a drought. And so I'm going to be taking this stuff out manually. Now, I have done a separate video on removing algae, which I will link in the comments, but I'll just give a little quick reminder here about how, as I'm removing any algae from the pond, I'm flushing it out. I'm driving out all of the little creatures that are currently in there, and I can actually see dozens of newt tadpoles, which I'm just pushing out of the algae before I remove it. So I take that out in clumps. What I can then do is wash that and check that I've got as much out of that as possible. Now, although the PondHub ponds, the water level has dropped very significantly, I think it's too soon yet to start adding tap water to the ponds. So what I'm really going to be doing at the moment is focusing on protecting water quality. With the larger ponds, if the water level drops to about a third of them being full, then I will definitely start to top up, and then I will definitely start using the dechlorinators as I've shown here. One final thought as I'm starting to think about drought is to think about how important ponds become during a drought, because actually it's not just a pond, it's an oasis. And to show you what I mean, I set up a camera in the meadow pond for a couple of hours just to see how many creatures are using the ponds as a vital source of water during the hot, dry weather. So there we are. Look after your ponds in a drought. There's many, many creatures that depend upon them. To summarize, Watch your water quality. I've done a separate video on water quality tests, and I'll put the link in for this one. Stay on top of organic matter, stay on top of algae, and if necessary, to support animal welfare, you can top up with tap water, but you need to use a dechlorinator to make the water safe. So good luck, everybody. I hope your ponds thrive in the drought, and I'll see you next week.